everybody, or perhaps it's good afternoon. Thank you so much for choosing to join us at our Ask Alumni event, Reimagining Your Career. So today is all about us having the opportunity to really have some in-depth career conversations. I hope you're as excited as I am. We've got two amazing alumni joining us, and I really can't wait to introduce you to them shortly and to learn more about their careers. So the plan is to delve into their career journeys, their experiences, and some of the things that they've learned about themselves along the way. And we hope that the conversations are going to inspire you to really reflect a little bit on your own career pathway. Perhaps you're here because you've got an idea about a new career course that you want to chart. Maybe you're thinking about, some changes in order to feel like you're doing the most fulfilling, useful, exciting, enjoyable work that you could be doing. So we're going to have a really fantastic conversation together for the next hour or so. So welcome again. My name is Jen Martin. I'm an associate professor at the University of Melbourne. I founded and lead the science communication teaching program here. I'm also Dr. Jen on Triple R Radio. There's nothing I like better than talking about science, talking with people. So I feel pretty excited to be your host this evening. Before we continue, of course, I'd like to acknowledge that I'm joining you from the unceded land of the Wurundjeri Woiwurrung people of the Kulin Nation, and I want to pay my respects to their elders, past and present, and to all First Nations people who may be joining us today. I recognise the unique place held by Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples as the original owners and custodians of the lands and waterways of the Australian continent. And in the spirit of why we're all here, I'd also like to acknowledge that our First Nations people were our first storytellers, and we're coming together this evening to hear some wonderful career stories. So thank you again for taking the time to join us. Really, we've designed this event to support you if you are thinking about maybe changing your career path, or you just have some sense of wanting to make some change. Whether you're quite early in your career and taking some early career steps, or whether you've been doing some interesting things for a while now and you're thinking about what might be next, we really hope that you find this session helpful, inspiring, and interesting. So tonight, the two alumni that you're going to meet shortly have had some really colourful and, dare I say, somewhat unconventional career paths. They are two of our wonderful Uni Melbourne alumni, Sayaka Sayeed and Alvin Lim, and I'm hoping that it's not going to take too much encouragement on my part for them to share their career journeys with us, and most importantly, help us to understand some of the decisions that they've made along the way, which have led them to what they're doing now. And I think, as you're about to hear, the work they're doing now really aligns with their values, with what they believe in. And I think that's probably something that we would all aspire to, and we would all hope to be doing work that really gels with what we think is important. So without me rabbiting on any further, let me introduce you to our fantastic speakers. Thank you so much for making time to join us. Let me begin by introducing you to Sayaka, who is the founder of Cultured Up and the host of the South Asian Mind podcast, which I'm sure we should all be listening to. Sayaka's got a really diverse background in business analysis, process improvement, and also counselling. And she has personal experiences overcoming anxiety, depression, and ADHD. And she's really dedicated to enhancing cultural responsiveness in mental health and fostering partnerships with community organisations. And her work has involved reaching more than 6,000 culturally diverse individuals and offering counselling support to more than 200 clients and more than 40 international students. So, Sayaka, I can't wait to speak with you more. Welcome, and thank you for taking the time to be with us.
No worries. I'm so excited for this. Thank you.
Yeah, me too. And I'm really pleased to introduce you to our second guest, who is Alvin Lim. Thank you so much, Alvin. Alvin is a people's first consultant with more than a decade of experience specialising in creating employer value propositions for global organizations. So he's advised a whole heap of brands you've probably heard of, places like Lenovo, Nestle, Unilever. He's got international experience and, again, a really diverse skill set in journalism, business transformation, and others. And he's really broken away from kind of the traditional career paths that we might expect. So he was previously at Dyson, but now manages freelance HR projects through Good People Consulting and serves as a director at the Southeast Asian Association of Graduate Employers. So Alvin, many thanks to you too for joining us.
Pleasure mine, Jen. Thank you.
So the plan for this evening is, as you can imagine, I've just told you I love talking on the radio. I do have some questions planned that I would like to ask Alvin and Sayaka, but I know that some of you have already submitted questions that you'd like to ask. So huge thanks to those of you who made the effort to give us some questions. I have them all here. We're not going to get through them all, but I'll get through some of them, I promise. And there's also the opportunity for you to put questions into the Q&A as we go. So I'll ask questions for a while, but I promise that I'll leave time for some of the questions that have already been submitted, as well as questions that might come to you as we go. So feel free to please put them into the Q&A as we go. So Alvin and Sayaka, let's get started. The first question I have to you is, let's just go back a little bit. Think back to when you were a kid. Did you have any kind of thoughts about what career you might want? You know, if someone said to you, what do you want to be when you grow up? Would you have had an answer? And if so, how does that compare with what you actually do? Sayaka, let's start with you. What did you want to be when you grew up?
I was convinced I would be a pop star and a musician.
Oh, I love it.
Clearly that didn't happen, and that's not where my career led me, but it is what it is.
Oh, come on, there's still time. Don't never say never. So hang on, Alvin, I've got to go here, Sayaka. So
yeah,
you know, the work that you're doing though, like has some element of kind of performance come into that? I mean, say you want to be a pop star.
It does, because I think I was so used to performing on stage just as like a hobby. So now when I'm like doing public speaking, it's supposed to be like I think the second scariest thing people are afraid of, or even the scariest thing. But to me, it's pretty easy because I'm so used to performing. So talking is just much easier that way. So it helped me in that sense. Yeah.
Yeah, so you kind of are what you wanted to be when you grew up. It's just that instead of singing and performing and dancing, you're sharing words of profound wisdom, right?
I guess you can see it that way.
Oh, thank you. Alvin, how about you? Think back to when you were a kid.
Well, I most definitely didn't think I was going to work in HR management consulting. That's for sure. I can tell you that. But actually,
you probably didn't even know what it was.
Yeah, probably didn't know what HR was, right? And actually, as a kid, I really, really wanted to become a journalist, a fireman, or a soldier. So I've actually been lucky enough to have done 2 out of the 3. So unfortunately, I'm not good looking enough to be a fireman, but I did serve 2 years as a sergeant in the infantry, and I did start a career in journalism as well. So pretty interesting. I got to do what I did. I didn't want to do.
Yeah, interesting. And do you still have any hankering to be a fireman, a fire person one day?
No, I think that ship has sailed a long time ago. A bit too wide to get through the doorway. That's for sure.
Sayaka, I have to laugh because when we were just talking before, Sayaka said, I might need to mute myself sometimes because sometimes my dog barks. My dog never barks, but there's a dog out the window barking. I'm really sorry if you can hear a dog barking. It's not my dog. Hopefully the dog will be quiet very soon. Okay, so we know kind of what you thought you might do when you were a kid, and as everyone heard in the introductions, you've both had really diverse, really interesting, and as I said, quite unconventional career journeys. So I'd love to hear from each of you. Can you kind of just walk us through a bit of a potted version of what you've done and what the transition points were, and really what drove the changes? I mean, you know, you've both done a whole lot of different things, and I'm interested to try and understand what those pivot points were when you made a big shift. So Alvin, maybe you can begin by just sort of walking us through what you've been doing since you graduated.
Yeah, sounds good. So I actually attended Melbourne Uni as a mature age student, actually. So I was well into my 20s when I joined Melbourne Uni. And before that, it was actually a career change for me that brought me to Melbourne Uni, because I was working as a journalist in Singapore. And I think my pivotal moment came very early on in my career. So I always wanted to be a journalist as a boy. I think I started as an intern there, and then I became a journalist, a part-time and freelance journalist there. Back then, contract journalism was very popular. I think I did very well there, even though I was literally the youngest person in the newsroom. So I started in the newsroom when I was just 18. And I could file like maybe about 64 stories over a 3-month period. And I think maybe 32 of them were front pages. So I was very much a staffer, right? And I think I even applied for a very prestigious international scholarship to further my studies that was going to be fully sponsored by the newspaper. But I didn't really get it at the final round. So that was a very pivotal moment for me. So through this entire process, I realized that I didn't just want to report on the news. I think I really wanted to get involved in the action. So I wanted to be more than just someone who just reported, right? And what I saw, or what people told me about. And but one thing there was that I was very grateful for my experience and my experiences in journalism, because that's helped me to be very resourceful, because often you have nothing, you're just one person and you just need to get it done, right? Entrepreneurial, so that ties into that resourceful bit, right? And very unafraid to ask tough questions as well, even to very senior stakeholders like government ministers and CEOs. And you also learn to adopt a very get it done fast kind of mentality as well, because you're living day to day. The paper prints, right? Just at 11:59 p.m., you got to get it done, right? So you get your brief at 5 p.m., you still got to get it done. So that was, I think, that pivotal moment was when I didn't get the scholarship. So it came from failure. So yeah, very interesting. After that,
which
like
is
the rest
which is
is history.
such a good story for everyone to hear, isn't it? That we pin our hopes on these accolades or these opportunities, and we feel like this is the key thing. And in fact, your story is not at all uncommon. That sometimes those things don't come to fruition, but look at where it led you instead.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm so grateful for the journey. I think it's a very cliche thing to say that, it's not so much about the destination, but the journey. But the journey is really what's bringing about every destination that I've had so far, and the ones that will come and are to follow. So yeah, definitely.
And where you find yourself now, at what point over the last X number of years could you have predicted that you would find yourself where you are now? Has it been a very piecemeal process to work out what it is that you wanted to be doing? I mean, are you still trying to work out what it is that you wanted to be doing?
I think at this point, in my mid 30s now, and now I'm a dad as well. So a very pivotal moment too. Like last year, my son Russell was born, and I think
Congratulations.
thank you. Yeah, he's a bundle of joy, and he's a riot as well. But I think it just so much encapsulates life as well. I think at this point in my career, I look back at all the experiences I had, and I recognize that the experiences I'm going to have as well are going to be very similar to the things I've done before, but just building on all these things. So I've kind of started to describe myself as being an event, like people, analytics, and also that digital transformation bit, and all the things that I've done, from journalism to management consulting in HR, through e-commerce and things like that, even being a coder on the side as well, pursuing these hobbies and passions, and then finding ways to apply them into my work. That's really, really been, I think, the linchpin of my entire career so far, up to this current moment. And I believe and I expect that in the next few seasons of my life, I might be doing the same thing as well, just constantly pushing the boundaries.
Oh, fantastic, Alvin. It's just absolutely wonderful to hear the diversity, but at the same time, the continuity of skills. I think it's fascinating that you can identify that those skills you developed working on a paper where, there is no negotiation here, this just has to be done, that how that kind of ability to just focus and get stuff done has sort of stayed with you. I think that's a really good message that for everyone listening. And I really encourage you to think back to, if you were us the question as a kid, what did you want to be when you grew up, what that looked like and how that's evolved for you over time. And there may well be, you know, opportunities for really diversifying while keeping some core of passion and skills and interests going. So thank you, Alvin. Obviously, I've got a million more questions, but let's go to Sayaka. Sayaka, I'd love to hear about your career journey, the transition points, what kind of really led to the changes that you've made, because you've also made many changes along the way.
Yes. So I guess it started when I came to Australia, Melbourne, particularly from Bangladesh when I was around 19, to study at the University of Melbourne. Did my undergraduate degree in engineering, civil engineering, more for practical reasons, in the sense of like it has more jobs. I was good at math. I didn't really know what other career options there were. So yeah, I did that. I graduated. I worked as an engineer in a company straight off of uni. So I was lucky that I got that opportunity. And I think a year within that role, I realized I wasn't really interested in building bridges as all my colleagues were. It didn't excite me. It wasn't challenging enough for me. It wasn't creative. And those are really important aspects just for me to thrive. But then luckily within that organization, I was allowed to move within the departments. So I ended up working in sustainability, and that's when I realized, okay, it's really important that the work I do has some type of social impact. But it was a lot of report writing rather than action. So I didn't really enjoy it. And then they let me move into continuous improvement. And that was a lot of business process improvements, kind of using a lot of entrepreneurial skills. And I found that I really enjoyed that aspect of like continuously improving, making things more efficient and effective. I realized I could see problems in a different way and solve them. Maybe that did come from the engineering background, just logical problem solving skills. And that's when I decided to do my master's in entrepreneurship at University of Melbourne as well. And that was really fun degree, really practical, not much theory, which was great. And we actually got to meet so many different people and like talk to them. So we've done projects related to homelessness. So we would actually go out and talk to homeless youth and people to understand that. But then the next day we'd be talking to like someone who has millions and billions of dollars. So it was very interesting to have that interaction. And it taught me a lot of people skills in terms of networking, design thinking, things that, I don't know, in the science department, you don't really get that opportunity. So that was really interesting for me. But most importantly, it taught me, I think similar to Alvin, just the importance of taking action, getting things done, and also just thinking of the world a bit differently. And that's when I changed from my engineering construction company to trying management consulting. And I've done management consulting, innovation consulting. I've even worked in venture capital as a business analyst. And again, that just helped me, I guess, understand how to talk to different people from different disciplines, and also just understand the practical aspects of business. And then while I was doing my degree, instead of a thesis, we had to actually build a business from scratch and work on a problem that we're passionate about. And mine was always personally mental health, just because of my lived experience and the experiences of the people around me who had tried to like find help for depression, anxiety, and it was just very hard for them to do as people of color and international students. And through that process, I ended up interviewing many psychologists, counselors, and I realized I aligned more with them. My values and the way I think and work aligned more with them than it did in the corporate setting. And that's when I kind of wanted to put the two together, use my skills in corporate and then my passion in mental health. And yeah, I started the business Cultured Up, which was meant to provide psychoeducation that's culturally responsive. And now I'm also studying to be a counselor, just because I want to do that.
What a journey, Sayaka, from, you know, engineering, building bridges, trying to find some interest in these things that you felt like weren't really yours, to now having really identified something that is so important to you. And as you said, your lived experience is informing what you're doing. I guess I'd just love to hear a little bit more. You brought up the word values, and values is, I think, something that, you know, most organizations talk about. Yeah, we've got this set of values, you know, people kind of bandy around values, but I don't know how many of us actually get the opportunity to think carefully. I'd love to hear from each of you. You know, have you had the opportunity to really think about your core beliefs and values? Is the work that you're doing now aligned with that? Are you doing the work because you knew what your values were? Like, I'd love to hear more about that interplay, because I think it's very easy for people to say, yes, I'm doing values aligned work, or I want to do values aligned work, but there's actually a lot of personal thinking that has to go into making that true. So Sayaka, maybe let's stay with you, given that you just spoke about your values.
Yeah, well, a part of that whole process was going through a lot of therapy, if I'm being honest, and just a lot of self-reflection. But I think what changed it was I recently got a diagnosis for ADHD. And what that means is my brain works a bit differently to neurotypical people. So I can do great, amazing work, like things that people will take months to do. I can complete it in like a few days, because I have a superpower of hyperfocus. But the problem with that is, if I'm not doing work that's aligned with my values and what I think is important, I'm going to get nothing done. So it was very important for me to align my work to my values, so I can actually use my skills and my brain to the best of my abilities. And I feel like now I actually am doing that work with my own business, and the results have been amazing, and they speak for themselves.
I mean, congratulations, and thank you for being honest with us. I think it's so helpful to understand where you've come from. And the fact that I just love that you have this superpower that now you can embrace and employ and apply to very, very real problems in the world. I feel very grateful to you for all the people that you have already helped and you're going to help, because of the fact that you are aware of this superpower and how you can apply it. So thank you, Sayaka. That's really helpful. Alvin, how do you feel about this term values and your experience of embracing and doing work that aligns with values?
Yeah, sure. I mean, firstly, Sayaka, the work that you've done just sounds incredible, and just want to say big kudos as well, you know, for speaking openly about neurodiversity and how it's impacted your life as well. It's such a crucial conversation to have in the world today. In my world, there are two dimensions that I see values. Like, one, it's in my work. So what I do is I come up with something called employer value propositions for companies. And I've done that and written them for companies like Lenovo, for example. It says smarter technology for all. Smarter takes you as an individual. How can you contribute and come on, you know, to build smarter technology that's accessible for the man on the street, for everyone. And what comes to mind is, maybe if you're going to a country where the level of education is still not, you know, is still not there yet, in terms of addressing things like socio-economic inequalities. If you think about how a Lenovo laptop, right, could be accessible because of the way it's been it's being designed to solve a problem, like a low-cost tablet solution, right, for primary and secondary school students and things like that. So that's the kind of image and the vision that you get when you talk about smarter technology for, and that smarter is a mentality. So I picked that one example, right? And in order to do that, you got to be very values-driven, because in all my time advising companies and also being embedded in organizations, the one biggest thing that they have is cultural alignment, that's always a big issue. And culture stems very much from the values that we possess and what the organization wants to drive towards and how that matches up. So I really, you know, care a lot about that dimension, right, which is the corporate dimension, right, like culture, and then EVP, right, the employer value proposition, which is what employees say it's like working in a company, and then finally, what kind of brand it possesses, right, to its stakeholders, whether it's partners, its vendors, its employees, or its future employees, people who are yet to join. The second dimension for me is more personal. I lost my mum when I was just 18. And I was a primary caregiver as well. So, and that was through cancer. She had 1 year. It
Oh,
was
Alvin, I'm
a
so
very
sorry.
late stage diagnosis as well. And it's how many years ago now? I'm just about to give away my age. It's nearly 15 years more. Yeah, more than that, actually. 17 years now, actually. And it feels just like yesterday sometimes. And I think that has left a very profound impact in the way I view life and work. And I do believe that life is a lot more than work, and that life is very transient, and therefore work is very transient as well. And if we could use our authentic selves to uplift others, even in micro settings, not just shifting big needles, but sometimes just applying words of care and attention. I think that that is so powerful, and that has really gone on to shape the way I view companies. I engage with companies. Some of them are very high performance. They obsess over high performance, or building a high performance culture. And I actually firmly believe, and I'm very convicted, that an engaged workforce, where the values of the individual are very, they can see that North Star, or that alignment with the organizational values and its culture. That's where the performance is, and that's how you solve the performance question. So that's very much, the two dimensions at play within me, an individual, just trying to do what's best for myself and for my clients and for the companies I work in.
Thank you, Alvin. I feel very honoured that you have also shared some really personal experiences with us, and of course, I'm so sorry that you lost your mum at that age, and I can see the immense power that experience has had on you, and the good that has managed to come from such a deeply traumatic experience. I just think, as you say, life is transient and work is transient. You've both really shared some very challenging experiences that have clearly had an impact on your careers, and I think that's so important, because it's easy just to talk about all the successes. You're both clearly highly successful, and I feel so glad that you are out there in the world doing the work that you're doing. But I guess for anyone listening who has this sense of maybe there is other work I could be doing that would be more values aligned, that would be more fulfilling, that I feel might be useful, people are going to feel like there are absolutely obstacles to making those changes, transitioning between different roles, between different industries. I mean, it's like, look where you began in engineering and look where you are now. They're vastly different. Can you talk, maybe for someone who's listening who really is feeling like those barriers might be quite impenetrable or quite scary or daunting? What are your thoughts on the barriers and obstacles that you've overcome? Sayaka, do you want to go first?
Yeah, sure. I mean, first, I just want to say it is scary. So the fact that you're scared and frightened is completely valid, because you are taking a risk. You don't know what's going to happen, and you don't know where you're going to end up. I mean, I obviously have just the privilege of finances and everything already sorted for me. So that's something I didn't ever have to worry about. But also I was young, so I didn't have like kids and a family to think about as well. So it was just, if I fail, it'll just be me facing the consequences, really. So I did have those privileges. Just wanted to preface that. But I guess in terms of taking the leap, I think we're at this age where, and this generation, where information and the ability to build skills is so accessible with the internet. You don't have to pay for things. You can just go on YouTube, figure it out on yourself, and then actually try and implement those practices first before quitting your actual job. You can try, just like a freelance gig, or just start a business on your own. It really is that easy. Yes, it requires discipline and time, but it also, if that's something you actually want to do, I think that is the minimum amount of effort you should be willing to give. But also, I am a person, yes, I do like taking risky moves, but I also always have like a plan B, C, D in case my next move fails, so I don't end up completely, I guess, hopeless and without any money.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, having backup plans.
Always.
It's a good approach, right? Alvin, your thoughts on your experiences of obstacles, barriers, difficulties, challenges?
I had a very, very massive obstacle early on in my career, which was pride. I thought that I was doing really well as a journalist, right? And I thought that, hey, this is it. You know, I'm gonna do this for life. It's fantastic, wonderful. You know, I found my groove, right? And to not get the scholarship despite that was one way of reminding me that there are holistic ways, you know, to look at the whole thing, right? And secondly as well, you know, like where my interest took me and led me, right? I think that was not an easy journey as well. Like through my experiences over the last 10, 15 years, I've met a lot of toxicity in the workplace. Consulting is definitely very high octane. Believe the rumors, unfortunately, but at the same
Yes,
time, the
I
work can be
agree.
so rewarding. Sayaka agrees, right? And I think, you know, like it's very different now from where I think Sayaka, you probably agree with me as well. Like where we started, you know, years ago, probably there wasn't so much conversation around mental health and the things that we got to do in the workplace, right? You know, to also take care of ourselves. You know, put on the oxygen mask, right, before helping others. In a sense, it might sound like a very cruel thing, but actually, it helps yourself and others in a very long run. So I feel that you know, early in career, sometimes we are blinded by things like, you know, being unable to set our own boundaries, being unable to say no, being unable to sort of let down our pride and things like that, or preconceived notions of what your career should be, or what how you should behave in front of senior stakeholders and things like that. Some of the best banter I've had are with C-level executives, like with the you know, at the highest level or the highest echelons, right, of the world's organizations, and that reminds you that you're just really, really human. I will always remember, you know, like being in, I think one of the CPOs, like CHRO's car, like she had just moved to the US and everyone drove a Jeep and she hated it. Like she was much more used to something more comfortable, but she just drove a Jeep anyway because she was like, yeah, why not? Everyone's driving that. And we had so much fun just bantering and just talking about how she nearly hit, you know, this lamppost. And I got into the driver's seat and tried to maneuver my way around, and I actually hit it for her on her behalf. So and you through these experiences, you know, you just realize how human everyone is, and when you can sort of let your humanity show through. Very often the corporate world will say, no, the corporate doesn't really appreciate it, but I feel and sense a movement, and I believe Sayaka too. That's why she's doing things she's doing at the moment, because I think it has a very real impact and is the future of work.
Yeah, and that's so valid because I think in terms of culture, that's where you said you were talking about the culture of the company. That's so important because that's when you realize if you're working with the people who also have similar values to you, it just makes your everyday better. Like, because you're going to work and you're spending so much time at work so often. If you hate the culture and you, it's like so corporate, whereas you're a person who prefers to be more human, that disconnect can really make you feel like you're not in the right place and you're doing the wrong career.
Yeah, absolutely. And I reckon it's not so much about just working with like-minded people and everyone who's just like
Yeah.
you. I think that when we can unlock that appreciation for diversity and why it needs to exist in the workplace, why you know, certain people act the way they do, and it could be for more than just the reasons that we see in front of us, you know, like that they're under pressure and things like that. It could be because of neurodiversity. It could also be because of the experiences, their lived experience that they're currently going through and before. And all these, you know, we are the sum of all parts, right? And I think when we take that out, it's easier said than done, right? But I think when we truly live that, then the values that we carry with us and the humanity we carry with us, I think that shines a lot more, it becomes a lot more prevalent in the corporate world, and people actually appreciate us for it.
Yeah, I mean, people are people, right? And people connect with other people, and we need to know that there, as you say, that there's humanity there. I think that's really crucial. I'm about to jump into audience questions, but I can't resist asking you this because it flows so clearly from what you've both just been saying. And I just love your brief thoughts on how big a role has courage played in your careers? Sayaka, has courage been pivotal? You said earlier, it's scary.
It is scary. I think courage is, it just really takes courage and a whole bunch of delusion as well. It takes a bit of delusion in just yourself, because if you're not going to do it, who will? Like, you're going to hear so many no's. You're going to hear, like, even if you go to your family, right, they might be the first people you go to for advice, and they'll be like, you're crazy, you have this great job in a big corporation, why are you quitting that to start your own career and start from scratch? Whereas if you don't do that, you'll never get to the place where you want to go, and you'll always have this feeling of what if. And I think that's just not the way I wanted to live. So yeah, in terms of courage, it just takes courage and delusion.
That's an awesome answer. Alvin, where do you come out on the balance of courage and delusion?
I'm gonna put my hand up for this one because I was very, very shy kid. Like you couldn't tell, like I was a journalist, right? Apparently. So, and I still remember like when my mom was in the hospital, like she said to me, "Hey, I pay, like my insurance covers all this stuff. You can actually ask for a hot chockey if you want, right? Go for it." And I was like, "Oh, I'm a bit shy, to ask." And I still remember the week before she passed, she literally said, "Hey, I'm, that's the last time I'm going to say it, Alvin, like if it's there for the taking. If you're thirsty, ask them for a drink, So I was that shy to that level where I was just looking at my shoes all the time when when I was talking to people and things like that. So courage is a very personal journey for me, like whether it was from public speaking, or leading difficult projects, project teams, or being a leader, like as a people manager. Courage has always been the very first confronting thing that I had to get over, because I'm not naturally wired to be to be open and out there and things like that. There's a lot of fear. So I think one thing that's really helped me is examples, right? Seeing people in the workforce who are, very much like me as well, but they had certain fears that held them back, but they dealt with the fears and they managed to share about that in some way, shape, or form. And that's really helped me by watching them go through that difficulty and then overcoming it, and then me telling myself, I can do that too. With a little bit of help, I get by with a little bit of help. And that's really helped. So I got a good village as well, even though sometimes I got to dig deep to find that village. But we all do. And that courage is there.
Yeah. And I do want to say the fear is still there. Like the fear doesn't go away. Every time you do something new, the fear
never goes away.
So yeah, I guess it's not like you're fearless. That doesn't mean you're courageous. It's like you have the fear, but you're like, I'm going to do it anyway and figure it out.
Yeah, and the research shows us very clearly that, feelings of being an imposter, well, what's known as the imposter syndrome, but really should be called the imposter experience, because it's not a syndrome, it's not a mental health problem, it's something that's common to all of us. The research shows that actually we continue to feel like an imposter the further we go and the more senior we become. It doesn't get easier, because in fact, the more often we get asked to do difficult new things we've never done before, we still feel like an imposter. So I think you're right. The fear never goes anywhere, but grasping that courage. And Alvin, I just have to say, I really hope I'm not speaking out of turn, but I'm just imagining how proud your mum would be of you, seeing what you're doing today and the way you are embracing your courage of putting yourself out there from someone who was struggling to ask for a hot chocolate. I think that's, yeah, amazing.
Thank you.
Amazing. So we need to jump to some audience questions. Paul, I can see you've put a fabulous question in the chat, and I'm going to come to that in a moment, but I am going to turn to one of our pre-submitted questions first. I've got a question from Aniket, and I think it's a great question, and that is your thoughts on how to navigate being in that period where actually you're really unsure about what you're passionate about and you don't actually know what career you want to pursue. So you have some sense of wanting to go out in the world and do something, but actually you don't know what that is and how to manage that period of uncertainty. I'm not sure who would like to speak to that, or perhaps you both have a comment. Jump in, whoever would like to.
I can go. So firstly, I want to say you don't have to be passionate about your work. Like that is also an option. I feel like a lot of people are pressured to find that passion and live by their passion, but that's not really the only option. You can work, you can come back and then live your life, and that's completely fine. But in terms of that space you're at, as whether you don't know what your passion is, it's hard to find your passion if you haven't tried different things. And I think that is the best way. You try something, you figure out what you like from that, what you don't like from that, and then you kind of iterate. And as you change career, you eventually find the one that kind of fits with you. At least that's how I found mine.
Yeah, I mean, that's fantastic advice, right? You just have to pick something and go with it. And if it turns out to not suit, then you change. Alvin, over to you.
Yeah, I have very, very slightly different, I think, permutation on that. I think the way I kind of see it is, I mean, some people say passion is just a bonus, right? It's just a job, it pays the bills, get on with it. But I think that when you're early in career, right, you're a sponge. You soak everything up, unless you're really sure you want to be a fireman, right? Like then I think you've got quite a structured career journey and pathway, right? And then you got to make up your mind if you want to lead people or not, just want to be a specialist, right? I think most of us don't actually come from that position. Like for myself, I literally studied politics, economics, and math degree, right? In a sense, it was mostly politics as well, and it was a lot of writing essays, right? And not that much quantitative analysis as well. I ended up doing a lot more of that, like in the workplace. For most of the last 10 years, I was an expert on people analytics, especially around talent attraction drivers, what motivates people to go for a role, what are certain essential integers that if you're looking at in terms of what you call talent attraction drivers, whether it's soft or hard or intrinsic or extrinsic sort of like motivators, to why you stay in a job or apply for one, like challenging work environment, or is it a leader that would support your development, things like that. So it's interesting how the path actually leads you. And I mean, what you think you might be very passionate about at the very beginning, those passions might change. So as a young person, what I would probably sort of advise, like if I were to advise myself again, I think I would say I think you never know what sticks and what you're truly capable of early in career. So just take every opportunity that comes your way, because some opportunities just don't knock twice. And you just got to get on with it as well, like when they don't knock twice and you've missed them, right? And that sets the stage for the next one. So I think not being too hung up over what you're really passionate about is a powerful tool. But the passion is a powerful tool in its own as well. If you really, really know what you really want to do and you know that you really want to go for it and you want to go keep trying and trying, I think that's not a bad idea as well.
Yeah. And also I think if you do try something and then you realize that's not what you want, it's not like you failed and you're starting again from the beginning. You're starting your next journey with all the knowledge and the skills and the networks you've already built.
Yeah, it's exactly what Sayaka says, right? It's the beginning of the next journey, the next chapter. This is brilliant.
Absolutely. I completely agree with both of you. So thank you, Aniket, for the question. I'd like to go to Paul's question. Thanks for putting your question into the Q&A, Paul. And this is a question around mentoring. So do you have mentors? I'm guessing the answer might be yes. And if you do, the specific question is, what was the most life-changing question that you have asked your mentor? What an awesome question. I'm going to have to put on some thinking music now while they both
Yeah,
both
that's
think.
really got me thinking. Yeah, it's a good one though.
Yeah. In terms of mentor, I don't have like an ongoing one at the moment, but I've met a lot of amazing people who have kind of given me advice and guided me along the way. The one that sticks out is not really a question I asked. I think my mentor, so I was going through a pre-accelerator program for my business, and I had a mentor called Shamila Gopalan. She's the founder of Herwin. And she saw me one day and she just saw I was very stressed. And this was through Zoom. So I must have looked like super stressed that day. And then she asked me what's going on. And I kind of said, I feel like I'm not doing enough. And if you're in the startup space, I think that's very common. You just feel like you're not doing enough. You have to do more. You have to get all these things done. And she kind of just slowed me down and she said, you don't have to follow the same path as all the other entrepreneurs you see. It's also, you can just do the things that bring you joy at the moment and be really good at that and monetize on that. And then you can think about expansion and when all the other things come. So I think the biggest advice she's ever given me is it's okay to just focus on one thing and be really good at that one thing because you enjoy it and it brings you joy and it doesn't stress you out. Because if you are stressed doing all these other things you don't really care about, you're gonna go nowhere pretty much.
Yeah, that's awesome advice. Thank you, Sayaka. Alvin, your thoughts on a life-changing question, or maybe it was a life-changing answer?
Yeah, I think I similar to Sayaka, I'm not currently in a mentoring mentor-mentee set up for a relationship at the moment. But one thing is for sure, I've had a bunch of people senior to me in the industry or in organizations I worked in who have been really helpful and supportive and had played that mentoring role during times I needed that mentoring role most. I've gone through therapy. I've had a coach, and things like that, like so a life coach, sports coach as well. I play badminton every week. But I think coaching and therapy, that's different from having a mentor. A mentor is something with that, is something that can be really, really powerful for you in your career. At the right time, at the right stage, when you need it most. But the mentoring journey is much longer than just, I think, specific interventions. I think that's the key difference for me. And I think the mentors that I've been lucky to have had in my career. One of them, I'll just give you one example. So I was hired by a CEO of an organization, and it was great. Like we had a great 3-ish years together, and then he got kicked out, unceremoniously as well, right? So he founded the company as CEO, kicked out, no leaving party and stuff. I was hired by him. Well, I followed him out through the door quite soon after, right, as part of restructuring. And I think shortly after that, a competitor actually picked me up. So a competitor company realized, hey, wait a minute, you're on garden leave, right? When does that end? Like, when can you start? Right? So a competitor was actually waiting at the door, right? It's a consulting firm. And the best thing my mentor said to me was, hey, you look like you're thriving under new management now. And I think sometimes those affirmative things can go a really long way. And then I ended up, staying at the company for 4 years and took me many, many places globally.
Yeah, I mean the power of conversations and suggestions and advice, right? Yeah, I feel like we could talk for hours. I am looking at the clock and we are nearing the end of our time together. There's a lot of questions. I'm sorry we're not going to get to so many of them, but just one that I feel like we should be able to answer really quickly. A question from Alex. Do you have a specific recommendation about the amount of time you should stay in your first job since graduating? You know, is there a period of time that kind of looks good to stay in a first job? Any brief thoughts on that?
I'll put on my HR consultant hat for this, yeah, and go first.
Yeah,
I
please.
think, but personally as well as an alumni, right? I would say that um, there's a lot of discussion about that among young people, and always like even senior people in the organization think about that very often. That question: is it 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, five? What's the magic number? But I
Yeah.
think what's really important to answer is what's in it for me, right? I think that's really important in your job or career. If the company continues to give you what you need and what you want in your career, and you can feel it, it's a gut feel thing as well, not just a strategy thing, right? Then you're in good position, right? Because you're getting to stretch, you're getting to grow, you appreciate it, and believe me, the appreciation is not it's you think it's to be expected, but it doesn't always show, right? And therefore that resilience that you have in the workplace is so important, right? To help you to counterbalance these forces at work. So I
Mm.
think it's only you will truly know and truly can decide on that. But I would encourage you to try many different things early in career. And if you're not getting to do that, like where you are, you should ask yourself that question: if you're going to have this continuing opportunity to stay, or if you go, will there be new opportunities for you? And always remember, the grass always looks greener on the other
Yeah.
side.
Thank you, Alvin. And clearly there is no magic number. Saika, anything to add before I want to jump to one last question.
Yeah, I mean, I would trust Alvin on this because he's like on the HR side. My career was very chaotic, and I'm like, yeah, I'm not sure what the number is because I've worked in areas for like 2 years and then another place for like 6 months, and I've just switched jobs, and it hasn't been an impediment in my career so far, but I don't know if that's because I'm still young or if it's different when you're older. But yeah, I would trust Alvin on this
I
one.
just want to quickly add as well, like just a very brief note, that you can think about it in terms of pull and push factors. What's pulling you away from current state, and what's pushing you, and what's actually giving you a push, right? Like, so what's pulling you towards and what's giving you a push out of your role or organization, and really try to think about how that aligns with your values and your interests. Those matter the most.
Yeah, I've heard that idea before, identifying the pull and the push, and I think that's super handy. Um, we do need to start wrapping up, and I would just love to finish by hearing really what your top advice would be if you have to narrow it down to one single piece of advice to someone who's here joining us this evening. I don't know if it can answer at all Leanne's question. Leanne, I'm so sorry, it's such a brilliant question, but I'm sure I'm not allowed to go over time. Leanne said, how do you make a career change when you've worked in the same area your whole life? I don't know if your answers to my final question will speak to that at all, but picture there's someone, they're an early to mid career professional, they're thinking about reimagining what their career journey is going to look like, they're thinking about making a change, which perhaps Leanne is. What would be your number one piece of advice be to them? Sayaka, are you up for going first?
Yes, sure. So I think the number one advice, whether that be you want to change your career, you want to start a business, you want to do whatever, travel the world and not work, whatever it is, um, always ask for advice and guidance from someone who has done it or who is living the life you want to live, rather than listening to the advice and guidance of people who haven't done that, because then you're just going to be met with a lot of fears and a lot of no's and risks. Whereas the people who have already done it, they're actually going to help you get there because they've done it. So it is a possibility.
Awesome, Sayaka. Thank you. Alvin, your top tip.
I think for me, it's actually three things. right?
Oh
Hopefully
no,
this
there's no
doesn't
time for
stretch
three
too long,
things.
yeah?
You got to pick one.
Okay. So I think I said this before already earlier, right? So try everything, anything, right? Early to mid-career. You never know what sticks and what you're truly capable of. And then I think if you have ever have the opportunity to network and meet someone in a setting that is aligned with your interests or values, do it, right? It's always more about who you know than what you know. And I think finally, I'd just like to leave you at that. I would like you to try to find and be your authentic self, even if it seems like it might sell you short. And as long as you genuinely desire to leave an impact, that I think that impact will be felt by yourself and others, and it will be a lasting one. And if you are true to yourself and your desires, whatever they may be, right, I think it will show. I wish you the very best of luck.
What words of wisdom. I really would love to keep speaking for a lot longer. I'm so grateful to both of you. I just have to share a couple of important messages before I do a final thank you. But to everyone who's joined us this evening, I'm so grateful to you for having made time to come. I hope you found the conversation as riveting and helpful as I have. We're so pleased you decided to join us at an Ask Alumni live event. Of course, you know what's coming next. We would be really grateful if you could please complete just a really short survey for us. We want to know what you think. You can scan the QR code or you can use the link in the chat. And we do really care about your feedback. This is how we find out what was useful to you, what you'd like in future. That's how we shape our program. So we'd really love it if you could take a moment to do that. And before I finish, I'd really like to encourage you all to consider signing up for Ask Alumni. Alvin, you've just talked about the fact that networking is so important, and I couldn't agree with you more. I think it's the number one thing really that helps us. So in addition to supporting students, Ask Alumni does let you connect with other alumni and to build your networks. We've certainly heard how important it is over and over again. So really consider joining today and connecting with, there's a huge network. I think it's more than 5,000 alumni in the group. So we would love to see you there. What's left for me to say with the minute we have left is just Alvin and Sayaka, thank you. Thank you. It's been so fascinating to have the opportunity to speak with you this evening. I feel really privileged that you've shared so much about what you've learned, what you've been through, the challenges you've faced, where that's led you to. I'm so excited to see what happens next. I hope we can reconvene and invite you back at some point to hear the next stages in your career. But on behalf of everyone who's joined us this evening, I just want to say enormous thank you and gratitude to you for sharing your time with us, your advice, your insights, your experiences. It's just been wonderful. So thank you, everybody. It's good night from us. Best wishes to everyone on your career journeys. Thank you so much for joining and for submitting questions. And we can't wait to see you at our next event. Thank you so much.